Good morning, everyone. Do we have sound to the internet? Not enough? Point up if you wish more. Up if you wish more. Oh, well, that's interesting. How about now? Is there sound now? Better? The gremlins had turned it off. How about that? Do we have sound now? I can't see your hand. It's good. That means yay. All right. Excellent. Wow. Sure wish you could sit here and look out there. In fact, who wants to? I've been on vacation and I'm out of here. No, it's nice to be back. Mm. I just had the blessed opportunity to do an hour-long intro for newcomers to practice and newcomers to PIMC, and welcome those of you that decided to stay. Sometimes I scare people off and they're gone. But it always reminds me of how privileged we are to have this incredible practice and this place. Gosh. And this sense of community, of connection. So, to help knit us together a little bit, I invite you to turn to a neighbor, and if this is completely the wrong thing, then just put your hand on your heart. Promise we'll leave you alone. But turn to a neighbor and speak to them about something for which you are grateful this morning. Just some small or big thing. Maybe share your name too. Any excuse to hit that gong, it's fun. So here we are. Right here, right now. And since we're here, why not delight in the fact of having a body and allow awareness to be present here? And I just realized I hadn't turned off my great distractor. So please join me. The doors are closed and cross-checked, and join me in turning off the great answerer of questions on the internet. Something miraculous is happening. We take it for granted because we've been it since we were born. But the body's sitting here and breathing, and there's this mind, this mysterious mind, that may be thinking, planning, maybe there are our emotions. What if we were to set off into this moment that we could call meditation, with an intention to really love and accept ourselves exactly as we are right now? So that we don't set off into a self-improvement journey. And then we can just be scientists. We can just observe what's happening. And what is happening? There's a body sitting here. It's so alive. It tingles and vibrates, and it's warm and cold. And it breathes in and it breathes out. According to the teachings on mindfulness, the first practice, the first thing the Buddha taught was how to be aware of in-breathing and out-breathing. How to use this natural essence of life as a home base. And what can begin as a sort of superficial noticing that breathing is happening can, through the application of attention and love, become a profound intimacy with life. There's a remarkable contentment that can happen when awareness and the body simply abide together. Of course, there is another aspect of reality, which is the human mind and thoughts, emotions, plans, memories, judgments. This miracle of awareness can notice this wandering, this often obsessive, emotion-laden, mood-colored mental phenomenon, mind, thinking. And the very noticing, when awareness notices these phenomena, for a moment at least, they stop. They become objects of observation rather than the subject oneself. So if we were to have a, quote, practice, a training, it might be to notice whenever awareness awakens in the midst of a wandering mind, and then to come home to the breath, to come home to the sensations of a body sitting here. Please don't go to war with your mind. I think we have plenty of wars going on. In defining what mindfulness is, awareness, non-judgmental awareness of what's occurring inside and outside in successive moments of consciousness. It's not quite right, but I like to add the term affectionate or warm. Some combination of equanimity and willingness and so that when you discover the mind to be wandering, even if it's been doing so for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, even if the content is hatred or self-hatred, even if it's a rampant journey off into anxiety, the single most powerful thing we can do is to be aware of it. If there's a judging mind and then the mind judges the judging mind, to simply be aware of that. At the beginning, we sort of have to take it on faith that that can be helpful. Over time, it becomes stunningly obvious. Any mental phenomenon we attach to and cling to or reject persists. It's because we make a self out of it. So sitting together here, breathing in, breathing out, alive. Awakening moment by moment to what's actually happening. This approach to spiritual life is called insight meditation. The same word we use for psychological and emotional insights. But here it's has a different focus, which is with the breath, to notice that the breath has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. The breath, each breath, every breath, comes into being does its dance, and then vanishes. As does every thought, every emotion, every body sensation. And so our meditation becomes one great experiment. Is it true that everything arises and disappears? Is it really true? Is there a wandering mind that persists over time? Is there a mood that persists, doesn't have exceptions? Does this experience of identification with thoughts and moods and body sensations, does it last, or is it too also ephemeral? And this isn't with the intention of thinking about it. It's not a philosophical or intellectually analytical process. Allowing awareness, utter intimacy with the reality of life as the breath, as the body. In just a few moments, the gong will sound twice. Let's not mistake it as the end of meditation. The gong is more of a community coordination or crowd control device. First gong, remember to be here. Be aware. Second gong is the beginning of whatever comes next, which can be done with the same quality of simple presence. No interruption. These minds are nuts, aren't they? I just had the image of doing this, which I'm going to do. Some of you will recognize this. I am the priest in the confessional. All right. Some of you allowed your minds to wander during that period of meditation. Fess up. I always lied to the priest when I was a kid. I didn't know what to say, so I said I'd fought with my sisters 3 times. Oh boy, the good old days. I did get a lot from that, though. Good stuff. Did you notice how the mind can be off completely into Looney Tunes and then suddenly it's awake? That is, I just continue, it happens here, and I keep being more and more awe-smitten by it. How does that happen? I have no idea. But it does. It does, and then presence. What a remarkable thing. If you were to pause for a moment now, was that a good or a bad meditation? What would your evaluation be? And if it was a good one, on what criteria are you judging that? Or if it were a bad one, what are the criteria for that? And usually it's, well, it was pleasant. It was pleasant. I was asleep much of the time, but at least there wasn't much anxiety or fear, so it was a good one. However we're evaluating it, the fact that we just spent 40 minutes with the intention of being awake, and having had at least a few flashes of brilliance, of that mysterious awakeness, that's a very successful meditation time. And maybe there was concentration and bliss and delight, and so that's lovely too. Or maybe there was anguish and sadness and fear and so on, and that was illuminated a few times. How extraordinary. So, onwards. Jim, are you capable of standing still? Yes? Here we go. I always ask myself that in the morning. It's like, can I get up? Yep.
What have I done? All right. Here we stand, aware of contact with the floor and the ability to lift off on your toes and back on your heels. Just feel the sensations in the bottoms of the feet. And then coming to stillness, we can just turn a little bit and let the arms swing. Feel the freedom in the shoulder joints when we move the hips the proper way. Everything just kind of floats. Okay, then we come to stillness again and line up the spine in a way that the head is kind of balanced on the spine and the shoulders can soften. Maybe we need to pull them back and go, turn them around a little bit, back and around. How soft are the shoulders? If we release them now, just to stillness and sink into the knees, drop the chin, go over to one shoulder, and then come back to the other shoulder. So we come to simple standing, stillness, and then sink and let our arms just simply rise. Staying simple and soft and relaxed. And then starting the same way, but then opening. Again, feel the chest expand and relax. Then reach overhead. We can pretend we're painting a rainbow, sweeping across the sky. reaching up, separating clouds. We sink, cross the wrists, come up the center, continuing to soften the shoulders, letting the movement of the arms just lubricate and massage the shoulders and the spine. Open to the side with the palms up. We'll draw one hand back and push with the other open palm. Turn that palm up. Bring the other palm into place and press. So you have a little spiraling going on with the wrists. Aliveness in the shoulders, aliveness in the wrists, aliveness in the fingers. And then if this is safe for your body, bringing both arms back, opening the shoulder sockets all the way around. And then just modify this if this isn't safe for you. Okay, then we'll lift across and let one heel lift off the floor. And then the opposite. So our awareness is in a reaching arm and a lifting heel. And there's sound. As the group moves, the floors talk to us. We turn and gaze at the moon. So we can be aware of the connection between the swinging arms and the rhythmic sound. They're tied together somehow. Pressing across. So are the waves hitting the ship or the ship hitting the waves? I don't know. And reach up and focus on the palm of one hand and let the other palm face the earth. Then draw the arms across the midline to the other side. Switch positions and come back. And we can label this gesture cloud hands and kind of imagine the upper hand as the cloud and the lower hand as the shadow following underneath. And there's sort of a integration of imagination and movement, listening, breathing. It can all come together. And relax the arms, open the stance. We'll splash in the sea, stretch the spine a little more and arch it back. Lift the toe. How does it feel to open the chest? What's the mood connected with different gestures? riding the waves. Opening the arms, palms up. We turn the wrists as we go forward. Again, another spiraling form for the wrists to really feel the different tendons and muscles working together from the shoulders down to the fingertips. Then we'll turn and splash in the sea. Change the gesture a bit. And ride the waves. And open the arms. And back to the center. So we find our feet under the hips, under the shoulders, the head balanced on the spine. We'll sink and make a fist. Let the dragon rise from the sea. What's the mood of this gesture? And spreading our wings up on the toes, we'll soar with the cranes. Turning the wheel. Floor has a lot more to say now. Swing the other way. And coming to stillness again. Lifting one arm and one leg. Focusing on the balance. How does everything move together to stay upright and fairly smooth? Is there any critical mind deciding if this is good or bad? Smooth or rickety? Some days it's pretty rickety. All right, here we go. Breathe in and release. And then come again to stillness. Notice what are the predominant sensations in this living organism that stands here. Is the breath a little deeper? Are we still aware of our contact with the floor? Can we imagine contact with the earth? Roots extending down through the floor. What does a picture, an image like that do to the mood, the attitude? Feeling grounded and stable and strong. Just allowing the awareness to move through the body, up from the feet into the lower legs. Sensations within the legs, sensations on the surface of the skin where there may be some fabric moving, or deep inside the legs into the thighs, the strength and the stability of a standing form has to involve vitality in the upper legs and the hips, spine rising, rib cage suspended from the shoulders and collarbones, and spine moving with each breath. And if we open the arms to the side, we can really feel the breath fill the torso from top to bottom. And then bringing our hands together in gratitude for another opportunity to practice, another opportunity to stand and be aware. Thank you. There you go, my dear.
Thank you very much. I'm good. Thank you for turning it off for me.
Oh, is that what you said?
Good morning, everybody. What a lovely bunch of people you are. You really should try, if you have time, come sit up in this chair sometime. It's great. There's Michael. Hi, Michael. This is our community giving chest, and the condition of the homeless has been in the news a great deal lately. They don't have a safe place to put their things, and so there's always an enormous need. And the things that we collect to help you keep your life simple and organized, they use to survive when there is no place to go. And that isn't going to change. It's not going to change because the weather's nice for a little bit longer. So anything that you can do to help, all of the items that we collect of clothing and toilet articles and that sort of thing goes to transition projects. They're a great group of people, a lot of resources. The children's program resumes next week, so if you're listening out there, moms and dads, and you're ready to come back, Monica will be back next week. We have a ton of stuff going on. Kempo Sawang will be here the evening of the 16th, all day, Saturday the 17th, and Sunday evening. He's a Tibetan Buddhist and a delightful man, and I think if you are in the mood for some exposure to something that has a little different flavor, it's all the same stuff, it's wonderful. Barney, would you raise your hands to let people know who you are? Barney is going to be presenting an evening with Tao on the 23rd, is that right? On the 23rd. And again, that's exposure to a slightly different way of thinking that's absolutely magnificent. You have Qigong coming up? 24th. And that's a half-day meditation and the kind of mindful movement that you were doing for a little while this morning. Christine, would you raise your hand? Christine and Gregory, who is not here this morning, will be starting a class, a 10-week class on the Eightfold Path, and that starts in October. So that would be a great place if you want to really get down into some nuts and bolts learning about the Dharma. That would be a wonderful place to do it. And Christine and Greg are wonderful and delightful teachers. We have, in 2 weeks, we're going to do a volunteer fair after the Sunday Dharma talk. So if you've considered volunteering or you just want to know more about it, we'll be here to answer your questions and to actually know exactly what spots we have where we could use your help. And there's an enormous need for regular people. There's also a big need for people who can just fill in now and then. So in any case, we'll be here to tell you about it. We will be having a Taking Refuge half-day retreat and ceremony the weekend of October 15th. So it'll be a half-day on Saturday and then a ceremony on the Sunday. And I think Robert will have more to say about that in a little bit. We have 2 retreats coming up, Hollyhock and Brighton Bush in October. So all of these things are on the website, and if you want to get signed up for our lists, there's some yellow sheets at the back of the room, so you get announcements as well, which can be helpful. Robert spoke briefly this morning, and it's just really come to my awareness lately of what an amazing place this really is. It's not, it seems like, I don't know, maybe I've been here a long time, maybe I take it for granted, but it's amazing that we have this place to gather. And the community, and we do hospitality after the talk where people get together and actually have meaningful conversations. And all of that is made possible by your generosity. We call it Dana. There's a bamboo box at the back of the room that would gladly accept your one-time donations. And we have a stewardship circle for people who are interested in committing funds on a monthly basis. And you will find that on our website. And that helps us plan. It helps nurture this community. So, I think that's it. Robert? Oh, yes.
Selwood is starting a new spiritual friends group. We've had a couple of meetings, and if you're interested, look on the website.
Spiritual friendship groups, we call them Kalyana Mita groups. And they are amazing. It's a place for a few people, 8, 10, to gather on a regular basis and really get in a trusting environment, so where you can really open your heart and become truly intimate with people who see life in the same framework that you do. So I invite you to try that. It's wonderful. Now I'm done. Come on up. Robert? Oh, Robert? Come on. Come on, you got it. I'm not prepared to do this today. Do come and join us for hospitality after the Dharma talk if you can.
Well, thank you for coming today. I had the intention of giving a talk this morning on the Kalama's dilemma. It's a very popular, important teaching from the Buddha about the fact of taking responsibility for our own practice. And the bar mitzvah party that we went to last night went on much later than I thought, and I slept in this morning for me. And so rather than, I could talk about it very easily, but there's a few things I wanted to be rather precise about, so I'm going to put that off. This is the forward, coming attractions will be next week, a talk on the Kalamas. And just to maybe whet your appetite, the Buddha comes into a village and the villagers say, another holy man, why should we listen to you or trust you? Because you're the third one in the last month, and they disparage each other and so on. And the Buddha had a really interesting and powerful reply, which was essentially, don't believe me, but also don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because maybe there's something important here. And then look through these criteria. Does it work? Does it reduce suffering? Does it reduce your suffering? Do wise persons follow this? And so on. It's a very beautiful articulation of how to guide ourselves. So I'll be doing that next week. Matt McTighe is here. Matt is one of our next generation teachers. He'll be meeting with as many as 3 people for 20 minutes apiece in Dharma consultations in this little room here. Afterwards, please sign up. Sign up or see Matt, I guess, or both. Sign up at the back of the room. Having a chance to talk to Matt for 20 minutes is a pretty rare and precious opportunity, So I have a few things I want to say, and then I'm going to ask you if you have any questions. Every now and then I like to do that, and it helps me get the pulse of what's happening a little bit. But there is something about community, and about membership, and about spiritual organizations, and things like that. I spent a few days in the woods on a creek in central Oregon. It's called Steamboat Creek, that flows into the Umpqua River. Beautiful place. Jen and I had 5 nights. It was gorgeous. And had some rather deep meditation time while I was there. And I guess the words that come to mind are that we're here for a very short time. And in the woods is such a perfect place for learning that. I was walking near our campsite, and there's a little hump in the ground, long, and it's an old tree trunk. That it was so old one wouldn't, even if one didn't know what one was looking for. It was so old that it hardly showed. And I paused and sat there for a while and was reflecting that that's us, right? That's me. And so there's the question then of, what shall I do in the time that I have? And how shall I relate to life, and how shall we relate to each other? And then there's more to that, but I can't quite get it clear at the moment. Yesterday, we were invited to the bar mitzvah of a child, one of Jen's long-term friends' son was having his bar mitzvah. And we were present for a 2.5-hour ceremony, which was mostly in Hebrew and was really long. And I had my 11-year-old stepson sitting by me, and he did great. The woman rabbi, gave us permission after an hour and 3/4. She said, "You don't have to stay here all the day. You can go out. You can go have a cup of tea." Or so. So we absconded and found a little shop that sold a Vietnamese shop that had goodies. That he was starved as well. But it got me to thinking. My childhood was in Catholicism, and some bad stuff happened. My father was a distributor of magazines and newspapers in Montreal, and he sold Batman comics. He distributed, and Playboy. The worst of the two was the Batman. Really. And it was so bad. I mean, the politics got bad. My sister, who was a Girl Scout, Girl Guide, the senior Girl Guide for the region, she was entering the church on Easter morning with the Canadian flag, the procession and all. And the head of the Catholic Women's League came out and took it out of her hands and said, "Your father sells smut. Go sit down." So it was pretty ugly. And then I was getting the strap. I was in 4th grade, and when I got snow on my back, I got the strap because that was bad. And so in 5th grade, I left that Catholic school and went to the Protestant schools, the public schools in Montreal. They're split like that. But I then proceeded, because I knew I would go to hell if I didn't go to Mass every Sunday. My mother took me, she was French-Canadian, though we never spoke French at home, which is sad loss. But she took me to the French church, where I went for many years, never understanding a thing. Not only was the Latin unintelligible to me, but the French sermons were also unintelligible to me. So I developed a very interesting practice or two. One was that there were 8 lights. And with my super breath, I could get them all swinging in unison. And then if I stared at the priest hard enough, I could have a brilliant white light appear around his head. And these were concentration practices that I developed that were very helpful. They were helpful. And I learned to tolerate boredom, which was a good thing. But much more than that happened yesterday, because this was a community, it's a small Jewish community. This was a community that I was observing was reaffirming its identity and passing on the tradition. This is a rite of passage for the boys, and now the girls have the bat mitzvahs. And there was a great deal of emphasis on this is us, this is our community, this is our identity, this is our special language, this is our... And so there was, and this is the connection with the forest, out of the cacophony, we as humans create meaning and community, which is completely actually artificial. Right? Because of culture, we gather together and then we say, we are this. And as is true in that tradition. It's just true in many traditions. Part of it is we are this and we are the chosen one. Our version of God is the right one, and our version of God has blessed us, and so therefore we're special and we will win the battle, or we will. And then we have a relationship with this God creation that we then can take solace in, and we can pray for boons. We can ask to be treated specially. I mean, do you recognize this from the religions of your childhood? In Asia, Buddhism is like that. And actually, in many Buddhist communities, it's like that still. That ours is this is the best form of Buddhism, and ours is the fast one, and we have our special clothes, and we have our special language, and we have our special gestures, and we humans really like that. And so we create a sense of belonging through ritual and through behavior, I guess. Shared beliefs. In this experiment in American Buddhism, or Western Buddhism, and it's true with the insight meditation practice communities in general, there's an attempt to be really inclusive. In fact, I noticed we don't have a sign. I took pictures of them. They have a neat sign on the door to their place. They share it with a Catholic church. I think Catholic church, which was LGBT friendly. And another sign that I'd like to get, actually, talk about it with the board, is we don't support religious intolerance. It's a nice thing. But what am I trying to say here? Get to the point. We don't have a membership. And that was by design. We're partly in reaction to membership organizations that say you have to belong. And to belong, you have to contribute a certain amount. But there's something that we lose, in a way, through not having a membership. And we certainly do companionship well, and the fellowship, the coming and having tea and coffee and things after, very useful. But, so you belong to PIMC by participating. And one of the ways to participate, which is a spiritual, one of the distinctions I want to make is the difference between religion and spirituality. That, I don't know if you've noticed, but I try diligently not to be religious here. Meaning that there's nothing to believe. There's an incredible map. The map of consciousness and the teachings of the Buddha are stunning in their completeness. But there is no creed. Like you don't, in some Buddhist organizations, if you don't, quote, believe in rebirth, you're not a Buddhist. You can't belong. In fact, there was a big brouhaha about 10 years ago when, what's his name that wrote the book? Stephen Batchelor wrote his book, Buddhism Without Beliefs. I read it and I cried. It was like, oh, phew. So this is what I've been thinking and feeling, but no one had written about it. And then he was attacked by a couple of the other members of the Western Buddhist world that he was misleading people because he was not having them believe in rebirth and something else. So they had this very interesting conversation in the Buddhist glossies about it. So, one thing we are doing, which is quite Buddhist, is to offer for the first time really this Saturday afternoon workshop and then a ceremony on Sunday morning of taking refuge. And that's very central Buddhist practice. And I wanted to speak a little bit about that as part of the ritual, part of the understanding that is perhaps foundational in this community. That there's a religious way to take refuge, and there's a spiritual way to take refuge. And I'm particularly interested in the spiritual way of taking refuge. So, everything really is unstable, isn't it? I mean, utterly. I was aware of it. We did a lot of driving on this vacation. We drove from Portland to the river back, and we took the dogs, and we brought the dogs back, and then we drove to Ashland, and then we drove from Ashland back to the river for one last little splash, and then home, I don't know, hundreds of miles at high speeds. And every now and then, I made the mistake. One night I was just clicking, and I watched some high-speed car wrecks from dash cam. You know, you just click on it, and then suddenly here's the dash cam camera of cars flying in the air. I mean, it's the reality, right? It's the reality we deny. And so my denial was a little punctured, and every now and then driving in the car at 80 miles an hour with the traffic and the big trucks, I'd think, my God, this could be over in a nanosecond. I mean, we're living on this knife edge of everyone staying conscious. 2-lane highways, right? Combined speeds of 160 miles an hour. Quite remarkable. So then I was thinking of refuge. What do we take refuge in? Certainly can't be in the stability of these bodies. So what the Buddhist world proposed, and the Buddha, I think, taught, was we have to lean somewhere. We humans we really need community. We really need something, some place to lean. And all the usual places are fraught with absolute instability. How about refuge in relationship? Anybody here had a divorce or someone die? I mean, it's in, or children, they grow up and they go off to Burning Man, like that. Or they go off to Asia. So, we can meditate. We can meditate for stress management. We can meditate for good psychological reasons. But when we get in deep, it really starts questioning. We question everything. So where can we lean? And that's what this afternoon retreat, or this morning, it's a half-day retreat, and then the little ceremony in the morning on Sunday morning. And remember the date? Coming up. I'm brilliant with dates, that's why. Jeez. So refuge in the Buddha. Now, if we were religious, we could take refuge in this guy. It's a genuine wood manifestation of the Buddha. And we could remember Siddhartha Gautama and the Buddha story, and we could, as most Buddhists do, deify him, and we could pray to him. I don't think that's what the Buddha taught or what he intended. In fact, there were no statues of the Buddha for over 500 years after he died, at his request apparently. What they did though, they made wheels, Dharma wheels, and trees and put them on an altar, or on a chair. So when we say taking refuge in the Buddha, it's not in that, but it's in that which is awake within us. When the mind wanders and suddenly, boink, That seems like a reasonable place to take refuge, doesn't it? In that which is aware, that which is awake, which is we have an archetype. I should remember this. When I come in, when I remember, and I mostly do, I like to bow to the Buddha. I'm not bowing to that as an idol. I'm bowing to that as a symbol. And in Joseph Campbell's words, be sure to keep your symbols transparent to the transcendent. So this is a lens which allows this little human consciousness to bow and to remember, somehow to intuit the incredible mystery of consciousness, which this stands for, as does that. It's a feminine form of it. Kuan Yin. So, since I can't take refuge in the health of the body or relationship or wealth but I need to take refuge in something. I need to lean somewhere. Why not the Buddha? We can call it anything we want, Kuan Yin or Jesus or Krishna, or the terminology that I use and the center is based in is the Buddha. But I take refuge in the Buddha, and then to do some reflection and practice so that when we remind ourselves of that, it means something. It means something at an intuitive level. And then there's a second refuge, the refuge in the Dharma. Dharma is a multi-meaning word. It means the law, the way things are. It means one's responsibility. It means the teachings. So, to take refuge in the teachings is very helpful in that there's something to study, there's something to learn, there's something, the map. And it's really very helpful. I mean, I love maps. I love maps and I appreciate them, and I'm particularly enamored of this Buddhist map. But the refuge isn't particularly in the map. The refuge is in that which the map represents, which is life. In the reality of life, everything's impermanent. No experience through the sense doors actually leads to satisfaction. That's it. Interesting. It's one of the great hypotheses of the training. And the third, the really big one, I guess they're all huge, is the notion they called anatta, not self, or the self is a process. To take refuge in the realization that if we seek clearly enough, we will discover that this is a temporary garment for that which we truly are, which is the mysterious conscious universe. So then if we're taking refuge in the Dharma in that way, then our meditation practice becomes science. It becomes developing an experimental tool, which is awareness, and then checking the hypothesis countless times. And so every time we come to meditate, it's not, I'm going to meditate here so that I can make pleasure happen, though it's nice when that does. It's, I'm going to sit down here and find out what's going on. What is the nature of this moment? So that's a very useful place to take refuge. And it means that we're not at war with reality. Remember years ago I heard Marshall Rosenberg say that should is the most violent word in the English language. And I've come increasingly to believe that to be true. This moment should be different. That means reality is wrong. Right? When I'm in meditation and maybe there's worry or anxiety or fear or something happening, and something unpleasant, and then if there's this should be different, I should be different. It's an utter war. Right? It's not a small thing, it's a giant thing, because reality is wrong, and if reality is wrong, that leaves me up a creek. Right? Because reality is how it is. So if I'm in opposition to that, I'm completely lost. And then I'm desperate. So I take refuge in the Dharma as a real tremendous guide for, particularly in practice. So right now, my task in meditation is to realize what's happening. It's not so much to change something. And then refuge in Sangha, the deepest meaning of that is to realize that we are in the company. A lot of human beings have come this way before. And a lot of them have experienced what the Buddha did. That's what the map's all about. And so can we. And so to take refuge, to lean on, this is not something that I, Robert Beatty, am making up, or that Ruth Denison made up, or that Lady Sayadaw made up. This is a living, exquisite lineage of awakening. And it's real. It's not a fantasy. And so to remind ourselves, there really is a reality of which I'm part. And then on a more everyday sort of level, that reality I just spoke of is also timeless, right? It's outside of time. There's also the reality of this level where there's a community of practice. And we need each other. And we really need each other. I mean, I'm in a very privileged, treasured position in the community to know there are people in our community who are dying. There are others of us who are very sick. Some of us have just lost a partner of decades. Some of us have struggled with unemployment badly. I mean, this is a community of real people, and we're facing real life. And we need each other. And because when those major crisis moments come, tolerating them by oneself, or being able to lean back and be supported enough to actually open into it and recognize this is not only my dilemma and my catastrophe, this is the human condition. Right? This is happening. Anything that happens to any one of us, any catastrophic thing that happens to any one of us, is happening to another 10,000 or 20,000 or 50,000 people today. Nothing new is happening. But when it comes to us, to try to stay conscious and to stay awake and be present and experience it with compassion and open into it, we need each other. That's why these Kalyanamitta groups, the spiritual friend groups, are so useful, and I strongly encourage you, if you are not in one and would like to have true friendship, that this is way too big for that. Even Doug's Thursday night is pretty big for that. But to have a group of people that you meet, how long did you guys meet? It was 10 years, one of those groups, wasn't it, Jim? Yeah, Jim was in a group that went on for 8 or 10 years, meeting weekly or every 2 weeks?
Twice a month, sometimes more.
Yeah, so meeting 24 times a year or so, one develops friendships. And their friendships rooted in the Dharma. So, that's a quick look at what it might mean to take refuge in the Dharma, or to take refuge. And it doesn't mean, traditionally, to take refuge means I've become a Buddhist. And if that's useful, then it's good to do that. I don't think of myself so much as a Buddhist anymore. When someone says, "Are you a Buddhist?" I say, "Well, I'm also a Buddhist." That my deepest training and experience, and obviously I speak the Buddhist vocabulary, but my Catholic roots are really important. And my Sufi training is really important. And I had a profound opening once in a synagogue at another. Actually, it was very funny. I was at this bar mitzvah, and the rabbi was very inclusive and connecting, and the Torah came around, and I found myself weeping, and I touched the Torah. It was like, whoa. And afterwards, I got to tell the rabbi, "I'm so glad I'm Jewish." I had this feeling of to be part of this. It was stunning. So one of the purposes of the little retreat is to help you recognize, what does it mean for you? If you really were to take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha meaning community, what would it mean to you? And how could it be supportive of you as you go through this trackless wilderness, which is human life? Right? Everything's cobbled together. We cobble things together for a while, and then they fall apart. And nations and civilizations, and it's always dissolving. So, and we will, in our lifetimes, experience profound dissolutions. So where will we hang our hat? This is physically one good place, but this place, right? This is very temporary. If the quote, the really big one comes, this place is gone, right? So where shall we take refuge for when the big events happen in our lives? And that's the purpose of this day of taking refuge and the ceremony on Sunday. So, there. Questions? Questions about that? Questions about anything else? Got about 15 minutes. Please, would you take this, Christine, would you take this to that fellow there at the back? Test 1, 2. Straight back.
Straight back.
What you said about reality is wrong. So maybe reality is not wrong, but reality is always changing. So what if my desire for it to be different or to change is a fundamental part of that dynamic process? Am I not shooting all over myself when I say that I shouldn't want change, or I shouldn't want something to be different? Is that not the same war?
Yeah, it's hard to talk about this stuff. That the clearest is the experiment of in meditation, what's happening is happening, and if what's happening is it should be different and I hate this and I wish it was different, then that's what's happening. And so, yep, there's that. And however, when we acknowledge that as that, what's left? Nothing. Right? It may continue, and then moment after moment, we just accept and accept and accept and accept. We just keep putting down the war, putting down the war, putting down the war.
What about I should be doing something to make it different that I'm not doing somehow?
Should be doing something to make it different. I guess what I'm saying is I prefer not to suffer. And whenever I discover suffering through demanding something to be different, I like to let go of the suffering. Not that I can always. That didn't land quite right, did it? It's still a little stuck in the craw. What's the stuck spot?
I don't know, I think I just described it.
Something comes to mind. Let me share this with you. I'm in a long-term intimate relationship called a marriage. My early conditioning is that I will be abandoned and that I'm not loved or lovable. Despite 40 years of meditation and 35 years of psychotherapy, it still happens. Happened on this trip. Right? Why would she prefer to read that novel to being in connection with me? Well, it's clearly because I'm unlovable and there's no love. Right? Now, all I can really do with that is accept it. That's what's happening. That's the structure. And I don't have to try to change it. I'm kind of done with trying to change it. And I've done a lot of really good things about changing it and moderating it and dealing with the old memories and trauma and so on. But it's still there. So what shall I do with it? Oh, here's this again. Ah. And it still goes on. I can be sitting on a log by this beautiful river and the poor me story can be happening, and but blessedly, it's becoming clearer and clearer. I don't have to do anything about it. In fact, I can't do anything about it. It's just it's like the river's running, and those cute little bugs are zooming around all over the surface of it, and the personality neurotic mind is doing its self-torture thing. There's no difference. It's just nature unfolding. And it hurts. So accepting that, it's all, it seems to me it's all just about, ultimately it's just about accepting. It's like this. And that means I'm not sticking the second arrow in and churning it around and creating all the extra. And not finding fault with the other person who isn't somehow or another living up to some impossible expectation. Please.
Just thinking of you knocking on the Buddha there.
Would you hold the microphone closer, please?
Yeah, just speaking of a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about a story where there was some spiritual teacher and you and other students, were cutting up the remaining food and that it was really special to you and stuff. And you were telling it in a kind of like that you now don't see it the way you saw it at that point in time, and just thinking about that when kind of knocking on the Buddha, and it's it's not this, it's not that. How did that change for you? When did you stop thinking of the magical food?
Oh. Gosh. That's a really good question. I'm not sure how to answer that. I'm going to reflect on it though, because it's a big change in a mere 30 years. A few things have come to mind. Thanks for the question. That's very interesting. I think the ordinariness of Ruth Dennison's death was very helpful. Of her death. She had a stroke, couldn't eat or drink. We allowed her to die as she wished, and she expired. And but there's another piece that's coming in. No one can do it for us. No one can. At best, a person can point out what we're doing and help us see what's happening. But I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that. I'll get back to you. It's exciting, actually, because it is a big change. I don't. Yeah. What's that? Oh, magical food. Oh, Tangpulu Sayadaw, a great famous supposed arahat, fully realized being from Burma, who I went to Burma to ordain under for a week back a long time ago. And he came to Palo Alto in 30 years ago. And I was among the people who were helping get his food together. And when his food would come back, we'd sort of compete over who could get it, because it was sacred food, because the master had it on his plate. I mean, it sounds a little nutty, doesn't it? But we were into it. I mean, there was a little competition. If you're the person carrying the tray back, you could gobble a bit before you got it to the... Which was certainly helping to enlighten one, right? Jeez. That's a good, I'm going to reflect on that. Thank you. I mean, well, yeah. Fun. Please, hang on. Bring it up there.
I'd like to go back just for a moment to the first man's concern or question, should there be something that he's doing? And you talked about your experience of letting go, and I really love that. But you did a lot of work to get there.
Absolutely.
You did do your 35 years of psychotherapy and your 40 years of meditation. So while it sounds sort of simple, you have to have the awareness and the recognition first, I would think, in order to get to the point where you can recognize and accept and let go. So if you want to comment on that.
I will, yes. I was so caught up in the depression and anguish, blurred through substance use and abuse, that in the early days of my therapy, I was meditating, but in the early days of my therapy, I would see my therapist and I would be sane for about an hour after the meeting. And then I'd be lost in the anguish and the weirdness again for the week, really, with occasional moments of clarity. And so I have the greatest of respect for therapists, for guides who help people do this, and for any of us that does the work, to pause long enough and to open into the anguish, which is the remnant of our early trauma and of the losses in our lives and the wounding that we experience. And I mean, if we could see, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have balloons over our heads right now, and could see what's happened to us and the stuff that we're dealing with right now, we would be just full of compassion. Because we're all pretending that we're okay, and we're not. And so yes, I'm so grateful that the teachers I've had, the spiritual teachers, and also the spiritual teachers in the form of a therapist who could help me realize how much rage I had, for instance, that only having come to terms with it and met it and grieved it, is it now possible to notice, oh, there's little Bobby, the abandoned kid, and all right, well, let's pay attention to the water striders instead of that. But that previously would have been repression and denial, whereas now it's more balanced. But that's absolutely true. And to every one of us in this room, as you meditate, we have to hit all this stuff. We encounter it all. And that's why that's why it's so difficult to maintain a daily meditation practice, and why most people really won't take up meditation as a major part of your life. Sit for an hour every day. That's one of my teachers in India said, sit for at least an hour every day and everything else will fall in place. And it's really true. If you sit for an hour a day, lots of stuff will happen, and it won't all be bliss. Right? It'll start, you'll need help. You'll need a hand to hold. You'll need someone who knows the map and the way. Because it unearths what's going on in us. And what's going on in us is dukkha, unsatisfactory and suffering. But it's the great wonder of it is that it's actually doable. Right? We actually can wake up and become more peaceful and loving. Whew. The price is high. Wally. Last question.
Yeah, I wanted to go back again to the gentleman who brought up about should, and I thought it was a really profound comment that he made, and a very much of an awareness, because I don't think there's anybody here who isn't full of shoulds. And I should know the Eightfold Path better. I should take refuge. I don't know, I should drive better when I drive. It just goes, it pervades our entire life. And I think, the change of language is helpful. I'm reading a book called Nonviolent Communication, switching the language.
Yeah.
Because the structure of language is violent, that we live with. So instead of saying, I should know the Eightfold Path, we need to, I can't even think of the words right now to say about what a better way of putting it. The Eightfold Path is my life. That sort of thing. But it's just, I've been reveling in that question of, I'm full of shoulds. And it's saying, yep, that is really quite true. And I think we all are. So that's my comment. Leave it to you to go further.
I wonder if it might be true that the separate self is a should. The experience of separateness is all about should. I want it different. Pleasure, pain, I want it different. Well, thank you. Thank you for that great question. Two great, good. Thinker-uponers. It's going to be fun with that. So please do join us for tea and cookies and goodies, and consider whether you might like to do that little retreat on taking refuge. October 20. October the 15th, 2016, he said. I think so. There is a registration for it, yeah. Please. Now that you mention it, it is on the 15th and the 16th. All right. Please let's take a moment, just a moment to breathe and be here with whatever is. And I would like to thank you for coming and for allowing me to play this role. I don't exist without you in this way. And thank you to those of you that joined us on the internet today and whenever you watch this. May these thoughts and time together be of great benefit to ourselves and all beings. May we remember the importance of what we're doing here. Right? This is the way of awakening. So let's make a big circle. Should we blow the candle out? Long, short? Kind of short. How short? A minute? Yeah. Oh, hang on.
This is called Beaten Upon a Moonlight Shore. I was thinking of you guys one weekend when I was meditating, and it kind of applies. You said a few key words. I lay there on the shore, gazing upon the moon and her shadowy truth. I was special once, bright and unique, a rock of stardust, though force to be reckoned with. After being beaten by the shoreline into uniformity, wave after wave through the millennia of whimsical lunar cycles, I see the wisdom in aspiring to be ordinary.
Nice. So if we can be intimate with the breath and feel the body, to be present in the body from the inside, then we can make contact with others. So notice the hand, notice the contact that you're making with your left hand, and give that hand a little squeeze. And as I like to do a little probing around and discover that there are bones in there. It's a room of skeletons, padded skeletons, posing as humans, but we can unearth that quite quickly. It's like Scooby-Doo. There's a skeleton in here. So why not wish this person who's walking around in this body, why not wish this energy field, which is a person, well? And knowing, perhaps, or reflecting that maybe this person is yourself. It makes it an act of great kindness for yourself and the other. And the person on your right, give that hand a little squeeze and wish her or him great happiness, freedom. What would be your wish if you were to formulate one? This mind is so quick to judgment and categorization. What if you were totally generous? What would you wish this person? And so around our circle, hand to hand and heart to heart, to all of us. And we are representatives of our loved ones, the persons we cherish as our enemies, the other. We can't fit all 7 billion people here in the room, but we can bring them to the heart. And similarly with the countless beings, our brothers and sisters of the air, the earth, and the water. I think of this as relaxing back into life. And let's close today with a very simple chant of Om that we'll do at your own pace. Om, vibrating at the crown of the head. And we'll just do it for a few moments till the bell rings. Standing, touching the floor, fully awake. Please notice the intention to allow the eyes to open. And then to the degree that it's comfortable, let yourself look around the room. What if it's true that every single being here is a manifestation of the same mysterious consciousness? Then when we make eye contact, it's eye contact with ourselves. And in the ongoing experiment with the hypothesis of impermanence, what will happen if we try to let go of each other's hands? Will we succeed and prove impermanence? Or will we discover that we are superglued together? Oh, also before we end, I want to thank Gary. Thank you for taking the teaching seat. Very much appreciated by everyone. So let's see, can we let go? Aha. Hypothesis confirmed again. So thanks for coming. Do please come and have some goodies with us. Oh, and introduce yourself please to the persons on your left and right.